Thank you and good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The time is 9:03. This is a one-day meeting of the Physical Therapy Board of California. Today we are meeting virtually by WebEx. Today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022. This is an official business meeting of the Physical Therapy Board. The board's role during the pandemic continues to be to maintain consumer protection and consult with local and state entities on the laws and regulations pertaining to the physical therapy industry. I'd also like to explain how this meeting will be conducted. We do have a moderator from the Department of Consumer Affairs online to help us today. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconferencing process. We will take public comment on specific agenda items, and at both the beginning and end of the meeting, there will be a comment session for items not on the agenda. Public comments must be specific to the agenda item that is being discussed. If you make a comment during a specific agenda item that is not related to that topic, you will be placed on mute by the moderator. All comments that do not directly relate to an item on the agenda should be held until the agenda item for items not on the agenda. The board follows the Open Meeting Act, so while we accept and appreciate the public's comments, we cannot respond to those comments. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before you make your comments. The moderator will give instructions on how to participate in each opportunity for public comment. This meeting is being recorded and minutes of the meeting will be prepared. Can we please have roll call?
Alicia Rabeni, amen.
Here.
Tanya McMillian.
Here.
Dale Armstrong.
Present.
Jesus Dominguez.
Present.
Daniel Drummer. Daniel Drummer.
Present.
Katerina Ellaby.
Present.
Jonathan Irvin. Mr. Irvin will be joining the meeting later. All members are present with the exception of Mr. Irvin, and the board has a quorum.
Thank you. And if we could please have Dr. Dale Armstrong read the board's mission statement for us.
Good morning. The mission of the Physical Therapy Board of California is to advance and protect the interests of the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. And before we go on to agenda item number 4, I just want to say good morning to our fellow board members, to the public, to staff. Here we are again online, but hopefully it'll be the last time. And I'm happy that we're able to convene to continue board business. And with that, I'm going to ask for public comments on agenda items that are, or on items that are not on the agenda. Moderator, can you please facilitate comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I am opening up the Q&A panel. So if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. If you do not see the Q&A panel, you may click on the question mark within a square at the bottom of your screen. And you can also raise your hand. If we could show slide 6, co-moderator, we can display instructions as well. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. Madam Board President, shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, agenda item number 6. It looks like we're going to move into approving meeting minutes. I'm sorry, agenda item number 5. We'll start with September 16th, 2021.
The September 2021 draft meeting minutes begin on page 13 of the meeting materials. I'll go through each page for any members' edits. Were there any edits on page 13? Page 14? Page 15?
This is Dale Armstrong. I actually may have made an error in the page when I wrote it down, but I have for lines 102 to 105. There seems to be a skip in the. It just skips a line, and there's half of a sentence. It's lines 102 to 105, and it's the September 16th minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. We'll go ahead and make that edit. Were there any other changes on page 15? Page 16? Page 17? Page 18? Page 19? Page 20? Page 21? Page 22? Page 23? Page 24? Page 25? Page 26? 27? Page 28? Page 29? Page 30?
This is
Page
Daniel.
30.
Hello?
Yes, sorry.
I have a question about whether the language of the rulemaking report for 12C that action was taken on. Looks like there was the vote that was on the on the top of page 31. I'm wondering if the actual language that was adopted in that rulemaking report should be included in the minutes. Because an action was taken against that report language, it's my sense that it should be included in the minutes so that there's an accurate reflection of what the action was.
Dr. Drummer, sir, are you asking that the actual regulatory language be included in the minutes as part of the motion?
Correct, because it's where the board at that point approved the proposed language, and the language is not the actual language that was approved is not present in the minutes. There's reference to it.
I think it's certainly something we can do for ease of use, if you will. I don't think there's any kind of legal requirement that asks us to do it because they could piece it together going back through the materials that those minutes reference, but we can certainly include it if you'd like.
Because there's potential for changes or incorrect copies. In my mind, the actual language that was voted on should be there. I don't know if it's something that I've necessarily paid attention to in the past, or if it's just something because I was not present at that meeting. If it's just catching my mind at this time.
So with the intent of catching any kind of amendments that were made during that discussion, whatever the agreed upon language will be included in the minutes that include the motion and the vote. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. It's not an editorial change, it's just an inclusion.
Yeah. It's a good idea, Dr. Drummer, I think, and the fact that you were not there and weren't able to fully understand, even as a board member, what the original language was versus the motion, I think it's a good idea to include it.
Were there any other
And I did
edits
not-
on page? Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead. I don't need to. I can stop talking.
Were there any other edits on page 30? Page 31? Page 32? Page 33? Page 34? Page 35? Page 36? Page 37? Page 38? And that concludes the September draft meeting minutes.
Thank you, Brooke. Any other further board member comments, staff comments? And moderator, can you please facilitate public comment on agenda item number 5, the September meeting minutes?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 5, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can we please have a motion?
I motion to accept the minutes of September 16th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Armstrong and a second. Was that Ms. McMillian?
Yes.
Thank you. Public comment, do we need to open it back up?
This is Michael Pinot. We do need to open it back up for each action item, so we should.
My apologies. We do have a motion to approve the minutes by Dr. Armstrong and a second by Ms. McMillian. Any further board discussion? And I'll ask the moderator to please open it back up
All
to
right.
facilitate public comment before we vote.
Thank you. So the Q&A panel is back open. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 5, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We can have a roll call vote, please.
Alicia Benet Ahmed,
Aye.
Tanya McMillian, Tanya
Aye.
McMillian.
Aye.
Thank you. Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez,
Aye.
Daniel Drummer,
I will abstain as I was not present at that meeting.
Katerina Elvey,
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin, Jonathan Irvin is absent. So that will be 5-0, motion carried with 1 abstention. Page 40. Page 41. Page 42. Page 43. Page 44. Page 45.
Hi, Brooke, it's Kat. I have a edit on line 244. I believe when it states PTBC is recommended, maybe it's supposed to be as recommended or is recommending.
Thank you, Ms. Elby. We'll go ahead and make that edit.
Thank you.
Any additional edits on page 45?
On line 258, the very end, if we go back to 257, whereas a webcast is the public just watching the meeting with not participation, maybe not participating or non-participation.
And we'll make that edit as well. Thank you. Any additional edits on page 45? Page 46. Page 47. And that concludes the October 15th meeting minutes.
Thank you. Any board discussions? Anyone want to make a motion?
This is Daniel. We'll move to approve the October 2021 board meeting minutes.
This is Kat. I second.
Thank you, Ms. Ellaby. We have a motion by Dr. Drummer and a second by Ms. Ellaby. Any further board comments? And moderator, can you please facilitate public comment for agenda item number 6?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. And if any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 6, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. If we could show a slide 10, co-moderator, we can display instructions.
Who's having tech issues? That? We are.
And this is the moderator. I am hearing conversation, so just be aware you might want to mute your microphone. Great. I'm not seeing any requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and with that motion by Dr. Drummer and second by Ms. Ellaby, can we please have a roll call vote?
Alicia Benny, amen.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katerina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin. Jonathan Irvin is absent. 6-0, motion carried.
Thank you. Before we move on to agenda number item number 7, if we could please have about a 10-minute break to settle some IT issues here. I apologize, but it is 9:22. Let's be back by 9:32. Thank you.
Yes?
This is Brooke Arneson.
Yep, we can hear you.
This is Elsa Ibarra.
So Elsa, you have kind of an echo going on.
So what do I have to
Do you are you logged in on another device nearby? Or that you can maybe mute?
Is it repeating for me as well?
No, you're fine.
I think Elsa just has a built-in echo herself.
Oh.
Just we're all on the same mic.
Okay, how interesting. Okay,
It's muted.
Yeah.
okay.
The distance from the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the distance from the phone though. Too.
Okay. So are we safe to resume the recording?
Also speak. Say something. Not here.
This is Elsa.
Yeah, it's just that distance.
Yeah, I guess it's the distance. There's an echo.
Can I try mine again? This is Alicia Urbina Amen.
Alicia, you sound fine.
So what do I not have muted?
This is Brooke Arneson. Do I sound fine?
It's unmuted on there.
Yep, you do, Brooke. You're fine.
All right, we've got it resolved.
Try
Okay,
again.
We'll try Elsa one more time.
This is Elsa.
Okay. Good, perfect.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, we are back from recess, and I think we've got our issues resolved, I hope.
Hold on. Okay, what should we go?
Okay, time is 9:36, and we are now on agenda item number 7. However, before we move forward, I'd like to acknowledge that we do have Board Member Irvin with us this morning. Good morning, Mr. Irvin.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Glad you're here as well. We have, for the first time in a long time, a full quorum. So,
Madam President, this is Michael Knutz. We should take roll again since we were on a break to make sure we have quorum.
I appreciate that. Yes, good idea. Can we have roll call, please?
Alicia Amen.
Here.
Tanya McMillian.
Here.
Dale Armstrong.
Present.
Jesus Dominguez.
Present and standing at the ready.
Daniel Drummer.
I'm just present.
Katarina Ellaby.
Present.
Jonathan Irvin.
Here.
All members are present and the board has a quorum.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 7, review of the November 4th meeting minutes.
The meeting minutes for the November 4th meeting begin on page 48 of the meeting materials. Were there any edits on page 48? 49. 50. Page 51. Page 52. Page 53. And that concludes November 4th meeting minutes.
Thank you. Any board member comment, or would anyone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to accept the November 4th, 2021 minutes.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Armstrong, and a second by Ms. McMillian. Any further board member comment or discussion? And moderator, can you please facilitate public comment on agenda item number 7?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can we have a roll call vote? I'm not sorry. A vote, please. Yeah, roll call vote.
Alicia Amen.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
As I was not at that meeting, I will abstain.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
Okay, so that is 6-0, motion carried with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 8, sunset review.
If we could just step back to the minutes just for a second, just a point of clarity, and in case the members are wondering, we still have minutes left from the December board meeting, and we'll bring those to the June meeting along with today's minutes as well for review. And we will be all caught up with the minutes at that point.
Thank you. So December meeting minutes, March meeting minutes at the June meeting.
Correct.
Thank you. And again, just for feedback purposes, staff, you are doing a fantastic job on the minutes, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, how about agenda item number 8, the sunset review?
Sunset review. I'm happy to present to the members that we had our sunset hearing on March 10th, and by all accounts, it was very successful. Our sunrise bill is SB 1438, and we received notification this week that our hearing is set for April 18th. We'll have conversations with committee staff on both the Assembly and the Senate side, off and on between now and then. But for now, it looks like everything went really well. We've gotten feedback from both the committee and as well as DCA that we had a very successful sunset.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. And any board member comments or questions?
This is Katerina. I watched the hearing on YouTube, the link that staff sent out, and I just wanted to commend the committee and staff for the awesome presentation that they had. And I appreciated how the legislator acknowledged our proactiveness when it came to raising the statutory caps of our fees. So I think you guys did a great job at making the case. So kudos.
Thank you, Katerina. Another board member comment?
The only thing I would add to it for members, and just for their awareness, is that staff and I will be addressing the background paper from the actual Sunset Committee as part of this kind of conversation process going on until the 18th. And you'll see drafts of that subsequent to our sunrise legislation.
Thank you. And Mr. Kaiser, you can attest to the very quick timeline that we had before the hearing. So I believe we had less than a week or about a week or maybe just a little more than a week to prepare for Sunset. I know months before that staff had been preparing, but in that last hour, they were working, all of you were working very, very hard to have this all come together. I just want to acknowledge that publicly and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate that on behalf of staff as well. It's hard to say, when, depends on what you call the notification of our sunset hearing. We were aware of the hearing date, but we weren't really aware of what the content of the hearing was going to include until about 6 days prior to the hearing. We had an inkling, we had a peek into the behind the curtain, if you will, got some of that information, but the actual background paper did come in a little bit later than expected. Staff did a great job in preparation. Both the president and the vice president were very amenable in their schedules. Thank you for that. I appreciate you both. Both traveled here to Sacramento for the presentation. We did provide the presentation remotely from the PTBC office, but I think that worked out well. If any of you had the opportunity to watch some of the other sunset hearings, similar today with a WebEx, there can be difficulties in communication when everybody is hesitant to know when it's their turn to speak because they happen to be residing on different screens. So the fact that all three of us were in the room, I think, made a huge difference.
I think so too. Thank you. And also want to thank DCA for their support. We were able to have a mock hearing the day before. I know that for myself, that was very helpful to kind of get the willies out and get some feedback and prepare. So thank you to DCA. And they also emailed us some encouraging words beforehand, so we appreciate that. Any other board comment or discussion? Okay, and so can we have the moderator please facilitate public comment on agenda item number 8?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 8, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to agenda item number 9, which is the President's report, the meeting calendars. So if you can look at your meeting calendars there, and we'll start with this year, 2022, and open up for board comment or questions.
The only thing that I have as far as a change to the calendar is there was a regulatory training scheduled with FSBPT in May, the 20th through the 22nd. Unfortunately, California was very interested in attending that particular training, but apparently the rest of the nation was not. And so FSBPT's had to cancel that particular training for lack of interest or lack of participation. So we will try again next time. That was an in-person training in Alexandria. So we won't be seeing FSBPT in May, but we do look forward to July and visiting Alexandria for that purpose.
Sounds
Jason,
good.
this is Katarina. Remind me who's going to be participating in July.
So July would be the delegate and the administrator. So in this case, the primary delegate is Mr. Irvin. Delegate is Ms. Ellaby. I don't know that we have solid confirmations from either of you as of yet, but we'll work that out between now and then. And if either of you are not able to attend, we will go down the alternate list in reverse alphabetical order.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jason, this is Jesus, real quick. Thank you for that update. As you probably know, I'd never heard anything back from FSBPT, even though I had registered for that. So thank you. I'll take that off my calendar.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No worries. Not your.
Maybe check your email again. Maybe check in the spams or those kind of filters, because they did send out a general. I think I recall them listing all of the board members from California that applied for that regulatory training. So, and if not, I'll reach out to them and make sure that they do in the future.
Thank you, Jason. I forgot the spam card. Yep, I'll check.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, Dr. Dominguez, and I also did not receive an email. So I just heard it from Mr. Kaiser a couple days ago.
This is Tanya McMillan, ditto. Taking it off my calendar.
Thank you. And board members, if you're looking at the dates for our upcoming board meetings this year, does anyone have any foreseen conflicts as of now in those dates?
No, Alicia, I'm good. This is Katarina.
Thank you. I'm good too. I know sometimes things just come up and we'll deal with that, but we'll look at this again in June.
Yeah, and in regards to June, I just want to make sure that and emphasize we're all happy to be able to host you as members again for the first time in a full-fledged in-person meeting, a 2-day meeting at that. And so we're looking forward to that. That's a little bit of a heavy lift meeting where I have a few presentations. We'll be a little bit deeper into the legislative session. So I think that'll be the closest to normal board meeting that we've had in quite a while. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, might we even have some petitions?
We possibly may.
Hmm.
Possibly may.
And can you tell us in general, so June will probably be here, December will probably be here, September might be on the road?
September might be on the road, but we are still having a little difficulty finding educational programs in both the Bay Area and Southern California who are willing to, it's almost shades of gray. One, to open their campus to outside speakers. Mm-hmm. Two, in alignment with, having students on campus at that same time to provide that advantage of having an audience. So we're working on that currently. Okay. And I think because of where we are coming out of the global pandemic, we're flexible in the sense that, we're meeting our mandate outside of the executive order with the number of meetings that we're having per year and the whens and the wheres. But September, we're going to be a little bit flexible as to whether it's Bay Area or Southern California, because really it is just supply and demand at this point. We're going to take whoever's able to, host us at that particular time.
Thank you. Okay, and I think we can move now to 2023 and take a look at the dates. Board members, any comments or questions?
Can I just one more thing on 2022?
Of course.
The only other thing on 2022 that I just kind of want to bring to the board's attention is the Cpta annual meeting. This year will be in Anaheim, California, and the PTBC will be hosting. And so, if at all possible, I'd love for all the members to be able to attend.
Are you talking about the FSBPT meeting?
I'm sorry, the FSBPT meeting, correct.
Okay.
And those dates are October 27th through the 29th.
And to clarify, the CPTA meeting will also be in Anaheim, but it'll be in September.
Okay, so as best we can, mark our calendars for that October 27th through 29th time frame. And more to come in June?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any board member comments on 2023 at this point? Hearing none and no further staff comment?
No, with 2023 just being semi-tentative at this point, we wanted to get it out for discussion as early as possible. So if the members are able to kind of look at those dates, they're consistent with, what we typically do from one year to another. But we'd have, there's leeway in those particular months where we could move forward in some instances a week to 2 weeks, and vice versa. So.
Thank you. Okay. Moderator, can you please facilitate public comment for agenda item number 9?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel, and if any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 9, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions, and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm not seeing any requests for public comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, agenda item number 10, Executive Officers Report.
I have a few things that I'd like to highlight under administrative services and primarily just staffing. As previously reported, we've had a few vacancies over the last year or two. But I'm happy to announce that we've completed the recruitment for the PTBC's staff services manager over the Consumer Protection Services unit. We've made that selection and we'll be making the introduction to that new employee at our June meeting. I think that particular position will give great relief to Elsa Ibarra, the board's assistant executive officer, who's also serving as the Consumer Protection Services manager. And just on a personal note, I have to thank her for the willingness to do both of those jobs simultaneously. So we also have made our selection for a limited term full-time staff services analyst, and we'll also be making that introduction at the June meeting as well. Currently, we're recruiting for one full-time analyst to serve as an additional probation monitor for the board, to bring a little bit of a relief to Mr. Monty Martin and his workload. So still a couple vacancies to work through, but again, we'll have more to bring to the board at the June meeting. The other thing in administration that I'd like to touch on is just funding. Typically, this board's been able to revert a portion of its budget back to its fund each and every year over the last several years, even while contributing a large portion of monies to an architectural revolving fund to assist us in moving from a smaller to larger location, and all of that being done. This year is a little bit different. This year we'll come very close to expending our full budget. An increase in temp help, an increase in the Attorney General costs for our enforcement services, and just preparing for and acclimating to a global pandemic is going to get us close to that particular budget line. So staff's been very diligent in watching their expenditures and making sure that we don't go into the red. And I'm confident that we will not, but we are going to get really closer than we have in a long time. So it's just something that I wanted to bring to the board's attention. For the only other thing that I would highlight is for application services. As we've discussed in the past, physical therapy is an ever-growing profession. And you might recall in the June report, we highlighted the addition of 3 new PTA programs, which moved us from 16 programs in California to 19. Since then, and now, I just want to update the board that there are 2 additional new programs, which moves us from 19 to 21. And that's just a start. There are 6 more PTA programs in development, and one additional PT program that's in development. So as we've stated before, those increases may result in us having to look for additional applications and licensing staff to shoulder that workload. So again, ever growing, and our growing pains continue to kind of keep up with the profession. So,
Jason, can you tell us which unit the second position, the limited term position, would serve in?
The application services unit, and specifically to kind of address some of those things that we're predicting with the increase in applications received as a result of additional PTA programs.
Okay, thank you. Any board comment? I'd like to ask about outreach, and I'm not sure that this belongs in the outreach agenda item, but it's specifically just about the timeline again of the website. I know last year, I don't know if it was this meeting or September's meeting, I had asked and they said it was like a 3-month process. Where are we at with our website redesign now?
We did take a little bit of a hiatus from the website during the sunset process. But I think in June, we'll be able to at least show you kind of mocks of what staff and I have been working on. April and the internet team have put together a remote site where we can go visit and look at what our new website's going to look like. And so we've made some kind of fine-tuning adjustments, and some of the improvements, just to list a couple. If you look at our website, it's pretty crowded, right? The information on the homepage there's a lot. So much so that if you scroll, it takes quite a bit of scrolling to get to the bottom of the page. The new page has a much better structure. It's more organized. It's practically a single page. Depending on what you're viewing it from, you may not have to scroll at all. So, and we're taking that same kind of approach with the internal tabs. And so we finished the homepage itself. And the current project right now is for each of the units to actually work on They're each individual tab. So consumer protection services for the consumer, applications and licensing for both the applicant licensing and CC tabs. And then admin and executive services looking at the laws, regulations, publications, those kind of things. I'm hesitant to even say when I think it will be done by, though, because I feel like I would just be jinxing myself at that point.
So hopefully something or some news for us to hear in June.
Definitely something to display in June for the members. We can definitely bring that to the meeting. And everything works well enough. Maybe a new website by June.
Yeah.
See, and I didn't want to say that out loud,
Right,
but
right. Will you plan on having some sort of focus group of stakeholders to get some feedback on ease of use or?
We could possibly do that. We'll have to talk to DCA and their internet team about access to that. The portal that we work through resides on the board's intranet. And so it might be a little difficult to get somebody from the outside to be able to view it. But it's certainly something that we can ask them about. And having said that, once the new website goes live, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to stop continuing to improve it. We would definitely take stakeholder, feedback on their own individual experience and consider any kind of improvements that need to be made.
Okay. Any other board member comment?
This is Daniel. Jason, do you know, are they also working on a mobile optimized version as well as a desktop optimized version?
Yeah, the one thing that's nice about this new template is that it is multi-device optional. So your experience is going to be distinctly different using a mobile device versus a desktop device. The formats will change, the size of boxes, fonts, those kind of things will change. So instead of looking at your cell phone and thinking that you might have to scroll left to right, it will put all of those things into that horizontal column, and it will even adjust if you tilt your mobile device into a horizontal fashion. So that's one of the nice things about this new template.
Okay. Hearing no other board member comment, moderator, can you please facilitate public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment on agenda item 10, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Agenda item number 11, discussion regarding waivers.
So similar to the materials that you've received in the past regarding the director's waivers as a result of the global pandemic, this particular briefing paper just lists those waivers that are still in effect or coming close to expiration. In particular, continuing competency is probably the one that's greatest of note. The waiver itself expired for those licensees that were renewing in October of last year, but the waiver has a 6-month extension. So if your license expired in October of last year, you're expected to have come into compliance by the end of this month. And so that's why that information is here. We wanted to make sure that everybody has a clear understanding of that. For that particular waiver moving forward, staff and I will kind of continue to assess the situation and when it might be appropriate to start auditing licensees again. It's going to be kind of a difficult audit process because depending on the random selection based on renewal, you could have folks that expired in July of 2020 and now have had an additional 2 years to come in compliance for that particular renewal cycle. So it's going to be, it's something that we're looking at trying to figure out what is the best kind of system to use to determine on an individual licensee basis how much actual compliance time they had and what we can reasonably expect from them. The reinstatement of license expires this month, and so we thought it would be important to bring that to the board's attention as well. The examination requirement extension also expired in January of this year, which was past the December board meeting. So that's why we have it here, so that the public and the members are aware of where those actual waivers are. All of the other waivers we reported at the December meeting as being expired.
Okay.
So this is the maybe last time we'll actually be talking about COVID-19 waivers.
Thank you. Board member comments?
Just another comment on waivers. As part of our sunset, the board might remember one of our recommendations was to take the direct access waiver extension and removing the words in person and identifying it as an issue for the legislature to address in sunset. That is also coming close to expiration, but there is talks with DCA that we might continue that particular waiver until we get some kind of resolution as a result of our Sunrise bill.
Fantastic. Board member comments? And hearing none, moderator, can you please facilitate public comment for agenda item number 11?
Thank you, Madam President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 11, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm seeing no requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And before we take agenda item number 12, it looks like this is a good time. We do have some representatives here to take agenda item number 12. We're going to go ahead and do that. Agenda item number 12, Consumer and Professional Associations and Intergovernmental Relation Reports. So FSBPT, Mr. Kaiser, I'll let you start, and then we can maybe ask board members if they have anything to add.
Yeah, so a few things for FSBPT. We kind of already touched on the May regulatory training was canceled. The other thing of note is we may be receiving a presentation from FSBPT at our June meeting. FSBPT has requested some time to present to the members on the existing eligibility requirements nationwide. So we're going to allow them to have that presentation time in June, and we're just confirming travel dates and those kind of things. We're not sure if they're going to be coming in person or they're going to be remoting in. Again, this year is our opportunity to host for FSBPT's Delegate Assembly in Anaheim. And then just a shameless plug again to encourage any of the members to attend. I'm sure all of you have heard me speak in the past of when we go to FSBPT or participate with FSBPT, sometimes we feel a little outnumbered. Some of the other states are there in full attendance. And so this is an opportunity for us to do that as well, especially since it's in our own backyard.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding FSBPT from board members?
I took a look at their website just a moment ago. Sorry, Jesus. This is Daniel. I took a look at their website just a little bit ago, and the May meeting is still listed as an active meeting. It has not been indicated that it's not active at this point. So trusting Jason, what you said, they haven't updated their information yet. So Jesus and Alicia's comments that they haven't received emails may be related to that.
Yeah, I believe we received notification the latter part of last week. So I'll verify with them again and figure that out.
If I may. Thank you, Daniel. Sorry about that. Yep, I saw that as well. It's still listed there. As far as the October annual meeting and delegate assembly, I'm on the education committee, so we're trying to get together some programming. Should be interesting. So yeah, it literally is in our backyard.
One of the things about May is while they've canceled the in-person portion of it, they may be converting it to an online. So maybe that is why it's still listed. I'll have to verify that with FSBPT.
That's what I heard in the email. I think they stated that they would be looking at potentially having an online version.
Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Urban. Sounds like you got an email.
I did. I didn't want to share, but I did get an email. I wanted to be like everybody else.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other comments regarding FSBPT? Okay, how about Department of Consumer Affairs?
Good morning.
Not sure we have anyone with us from DCA today.
Good morning. Can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Good morning, board members. I'm Mary Kate Cruz-Jones from Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me to provide an opportunity to give you a department update today. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected all of us in so many ways. As California moves past the recent Omicron surge and into a new endemic reality, new state and public health guidance has relaxed mandatory face coverings. Masks are still strongly encouraged in indoor settings and in some high-risk settings such as healthcare facilities. Face coverings are required for everyone regardless of vaccination status. Local orders may be more restrictive to respond to community conditions. Please be aware of changing public health guidance, and this is just remember that as state representatives, we are all expected to adhere to state and local orders while carrying out our duties. On January 5th, 2022, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that extends the sunset date set in Assembly Bill 361, allowing boards and committees to meet remotely through March 31st, 2022. I'm happy to let you know that on January 31st, Assemblymember Quirk introduced new legislation, AB 1733, which would permanently allow boards and committees to meet remotely, while also providing both virtual and physical options for members of the public to participate. If this bill is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, it would take place immediately. We cannot be certain that AB 1733 will be enacted or when, so boards should prepare for the possibility of in-person meetings after March 31st. Before attending any in-person board meetings, member must verify their full vaccination with DCA's Office of Human Resources or participate in COVID-19 testing. If any members have not yet done so, please submit your proof of vaccination. Your participation will assist DCA in planning for testing at any future meetings. Please do this as soon as possible and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need any sort of assistance. I'm optimistic about the future and look forward to meeting with you all in person one day, or at least one member of Board and Bureau Relations. In planning for the future, I'm also happy to report that beginning today, March 24th, the Headquarters 1 hearing room will also be available for board meetings. This room was previously being used for COVID-19 testing. However, DCA has reopened it to support upcoming in-person board meetings. Notably, HQ1 and HQ2 hearing rooms support hybrid meetings, and DCA will continue to explore how we can expand departmental resources to support any additional hybrid meeting locations in the future. I'd like to provide an update on DCA's Enlightened licensing project. This work group was formed in 2020 to utilize licensing subject matter experts within the entire Department of Consumer Affairs. The group's purpose is to help individual boards and bureaus streamline and make their licensing processes more effective and efficient by utilizing best practices, information technology, and cost-saving measures. The first deep dive was into the Board of Registered Nursing, which has been completed. A report will be released this month with recommendations that can be used by all boards and bureaus to improve their processes. After this successful first round, the work group will soon begin directly assisting another board or bureau. DCA looks to the future, and Director Kirkmeyer continues to lead the department towards continual improvement and excellent service. DCA is pleased to announce that Tanya Cochran began serving as the department's first Compliance and Equity Officer effective March 2nd, 2022. Ms. Cochran brings years of hands-on experience with DCA's boards and bureaus to this new position, and most recently, she was the Chief Deputy Registrar at the Contractor State Licensing Board. This position will oversee DCA's solid training and planning solutions, the Organizational Improvement Office, Equal Employment Opportunity Office, as well as the Internal Audit Office. Bringing these offices together under Ms. Cochran's experienced leadership will be a tremendous benefit, allowing DCA to better identify and analyze emerging issues and department-wide problems and provide timely solutions to DCA's divisions, boards, and bureaus. As a reminder, board members have training and reporting requirements. Each year, board members are required by law to file a Form 700 before April or face penalties from the FPPC. DCA requests that you file as soon as possible, and as a tip, I'll let you know the best way to avoid any reminder emails or calls is to file early, and we are quickly approaching that deadline. If anyone needs any sort of assistance, DCA's filing officer and legal counsel are always available to help. Board members who were recently appointed or reappointed need to also attend the board member orientation training within a year of that appointment date. You can register for the BMOT through the Learning Management System, which is DCA's training portal. Live virtual trainings will be held on June 15th and October 12th. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist, please feel free to reach out to us. That concludes my presentation, and I am happy to hand it back over to your board president. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate, for all of that information. I have a question maybe for Mr. Kaiser regarding the bill that you discussed, if it should pass. If our board needed to call an urgent virtual meeting of some sort, and we had to provide a place for public comment in person, would that be an issue?
When? Between now and when that bill goes into effect?
Correct. After the bill goes into effect.
So after that bill goes into effect, the bill language itself would allow for that. Right.
That's right.
So that new bill language is flexible enough that it essentially replaces the old, what we would call a teleconference meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially any electronic meeting that you would have, you would still have to provide a physical location to the public, but you wouldn't have to provide a physical location where every board member is presenting or participating from.
Correct.
So as an example, and what I find will probably be typical in the future if that bill is successful in passing, is that public area would be here at our hearing room in HQ3. And we've coined Evergreen as HQ3. So we're going to continue to refer to it until everyone else does as HQ3. In that instance, either myself or a staff member could be at that location, allowing for that public access to make sure that we're in compliance with that particular legislative language. At the same time, allowing online access for any citizen or consumer in California to participate as well, and for the members to be able to participate from wherever they happen to be simultaneously.
Yeah. ideal?
Modernized.
Yes.
Right. Coming up with that idea of just kind of taking what we have technologically speaking at our hands today and some of the things that we're all doing remotely in our professional work, and applying those tools to something like this. And it's not an easy transition to make. The law moves slowly but very diligently. And so, best practices have to kind of rise to the surface to kind of motivate that change in the law. The teleconference language was written, I would even hazard a guess, maybe in the infancy of the internet. So thinking about teleconferencing, video conferencing, WebExes, Blue Jeans, Microsoft Teams, all of those kind of things. When that teleconference language was written, we couldn't have possibly imagined these particular circumstances. So we're happy to see that bill move through. When we get to that part of the legislative report, I think you'll see we're going to ask you as members for support of that particular bill. It falls into a very kind of cohesive alignment with our Sunrise bill and some of the requests and some of the recommendations that we made in our Sunset report. And that's one of the things that we'll be working with the committee members on as well, is to make sure that those, our language and that language also work very nicely.
Okay, so my next question is somewhat related. Mary Kate referred to HQ 1 and 2 as hybrid rooms. And so, well, you see where I'm going with this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'll try.
Yeah.
So currently, both HQ1 and HQ2 have WebEx video conferencing technology installed within the hearing rooms, meaning that there are multiple cameras throughout the room. The audio and microphone system can be piped out both via WebEx, but also via webcast, right? So any consumer can watch, but any consumer that wants to participate, those two rooms can account for that kind of participation, either people in person or people remotely calling in, both on the telephone or through a video conferencing. Currently, Hearing Room 3 here at the Evergreen building doesn't have that functionality. So when we meet in June, as an example, we will be back to just an I wouldn't say old-fashioned. I'm going to use the words old-fashioned, right? An old-fashioned in-person meeting with just a webcast. We won't have a WebEx virtual component, only because the hearing room's not outfitted for it. But that's something that we're working with DCA on currently. And I think Mary Kate kind of alluded to that, not just this room, but maybe multiple rooms throughout California, maybe other state buildings. And then if I have any influence, and I'm sure that the discussions have kind of leaned in that direction, WebEx in a box, so that a board like us, who tends to actually have board meetings at physical therapy educational programs, PTA educational programs, which we know has a kind of a positive effect in our ability to reach out to future applicants and get audience participation, we'll be able to bring that WebEx virtual component with us, with both saving money instead of having it at being stuck in Sacramento, being stuck at a particular state building in Southern California each and every time. We can kind of get out around the state much more agile, much more flexible.
And we did somewhat have a similar conversation at our in-person meeting in December, did we not?
We did, because we ran into that issue in the December meeting, where we thought we might be able to do a WebEx portion in the December meeting, while we realized that the HQ3 hearing room, while very nice and has decent amenities, technologically speaking, just hasn't been updated to today's standards as of yet. And so we weren't able to provide a WebEx at the December meeting.
And I know we did speak with the DCA representative at that time about the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any movement at all?
The movement in the sense that we're building and anticipating what actual changes need to be made. So the HQ3 room is fairly simple in the sense that we know what works at HQ1 and 2, and we can just take that build sheet and apply it to 3. The really heavy lift is trying to figure out what WebEx in a box looks like, the mobile version, so that we can go to PT and PTA programs, or other boards can go wherever they deem necessary, whether it be a hotel or a convention center or something like that. That one's a little bit more work, more research has to be done to figure out how that's going to work.
So here's my question, and I just want expectation, like realistic expectations from board members. If it's fairly easy to recreate what HQ1 and 2 have here, could that be done if this bill goes into effect? Could that be done by the June meeting?
I wouldn't say the June meeting, but, I wouldn't commit, but I would anticipate that we could probably get it done in advance of the December meeting. So the next at-home meeting for us at the HQ3 would be December. September, like we discussed earlier, we're looking for either a Bay Area, Southern California location. And currently there aren't any hybrid locations yet, but that's in the works. So we may have to have just a in-person September meeting. But to have HQ3 outfitted and ready to go in June, I think is a little bit of a stretch.
And I know that WebEx in a box is a whole nother thing, but is there a possibility that that could get figured out and we could try that in HQ1 for the June meeting?
In HQ3?
In HQ1. I'm sorry, HQ3.
Okay.
You're correct.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think HQ3 being outfitted is a greater likelihood than the traveling WebEx in a box. Only just thinking about kind of the difficulties with internet connections, hardwired, camera locations, microphone setups, those kind of things. It's pretty easy to recreate HQ1 and 2. It's very physical. It's static. The idea of the WebEx in a box is a mobile version of that hopefully provides the same experience to the consumer that we can do in the static version.
Mm-hmm.
But working on things like what networking are you going to be provided out on the road? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be using any kind of internet line or network line that's being provided by the host? And how do you acclimate to that? If that's not available, are we able to do it wirelessly? Those kind of things. The cameras that are in HQ1, 2, and proposed for 3 are fixed on the walls. They're mobile, and they can be directed from a control center that's fairly large in the middle of the room. Mm-hmm. Trying to replicate that on a smaller scale that makes it travelable mm-hmm. for a thing like an educational program is where we're really going to have to do our homework.
Okay. And I've heard you twice now say that it's easy to replicate. And I realize that means it doesn't mean it's fast. But if the bill goes into effect,
right,
and I mean, we have to comply with it, and HQ3 is not ready to go, does that mean we need to move our staff and all of us over to one of the other HQ1 or 2 rooms for possibly. Our June meeting? Possibly. Is that true? Wow.
Yeah, so possibly. So if the bill goes into effect, and that is one of the requirements, all of the boards will be forced with this idea of booking into an area or a location that can support that hybrid language. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we don't know about that particular bill is when the effective date of that bill is going to be.
Typically, you said immediately.
Yeah, I think it will, but there might be a caveat into the compliance side of it. Mm-hmm. So, but nonetheless, what you're asking is a very good possibility. We would be booking and competing with other boards and bureaus for HQ1 and 2 locations. So having said that, the June meeting, while we are, planning on it being here in Sacramento at the HQ3 and being a traditional board meeting without a WebEx, but with a webcast, could change. And that change could even necessitate a rescheduling because we might find that HQ1 and 2 are already booked on those dates.
Mm. Okay. Thank you.
This is Daniel, not to interrupt your private conversation that's going on. But this is all dependent on a bill making it through both houses and being signed by the governor, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Other board member comment?
Is there anything that DCA would like to add, Mary Kate? I just want to make sure that I touched on it correctly.
No, I think that was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to CPTA.
So we have a few facilitator. We have a few participants from CPTA. There's a Miss Stacy Defoe and a Mr. Rick Katz.
Thank you. I had promoted Tamika because she had the CPTA after her name, but I didn't know about the others. So let me promote them real fast. So Stacy Defoe, and I'm sorry.
Rick Katz.
Thank you. All right, they've all been promoted.
Morning. Can you all hear me? This is Tamika Island.
Good morning, Tamika. We could hear you.
Good morning. Had some technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience. And I will be brief. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Again, this is Tamika Island with the CPTA. And just a couple of announcements. I wanted to remind you all of our annual conference. Thank you for including that on your calendar for 2022. And wanted to invite the board to participate as an exhibitor. If you are able, again, of course, we will be in Anaheim, so it does require some travel, but we would be happy to offer you a complimentary booth if the board is interested in participating. Also, we wanted to congratulate the board on completing a successful sunset hearing. We look forward to the introduction of your sunset review bill and are looking forward to the opportunity in supporting that bill by submitting a letter of support. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Tamika, for that report, and thank you, CPTA, for your support. Thank you for the public comment that came from, I'm sorry, I'm missing his name.
Mr. London.
Mr. London, Carl London, that's right. It was very nice to have his comments at the public comment at the end of our sunset review, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Ms. Defoe has her hand raised. I'm not sure. Stacy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have anything I'd like to add. I was just trying to unmute my phone, I think, at the time. So Tamika provided the update, and we appreciate it. That's it. And we may have more comments later on when we get to some of the bills, but we'll address those at that time. Thank you.
And welcome to you, Mr. Katz. Anything to add to Tamika's report?
No, I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Thanks for being here. Okay, any board member discussion on CPTA's report? Moderator, can you please facilitate comment on agenda item number 12?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on agenda item 12, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, just want to do a check-in here. It is 10:30. We have planned to have a hard stop for lunch at noon. And so my thought is to at least move forward into the ledge report and then possibly take a short break and then continue until noon. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Madam President, if we can take a quick bio break, I would appreciate that.
Yes, can we take a 10-minute break? It's 10:34. Let's be back actually at 10:45, and then we'll work all the way through to noon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. It is 10:46. We're back from recess. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Roll call, please.
Alicia Benaman.
Here.
Tanya McMillian.
Present.
Dale Armstrong.
Present.
Jesus Dominguez.
Present.
Daniel Drummer.
Present.
Katarina Ellaby.
Present.
Jonathan Irvin.
Present.
All members are present and the board has a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 13, our legislation report.
So the legislative summary in the meeting materials includes all of the bills that were chaptered, vetoed, and carried over as two-year bills from 2021, as well as bills that were introduced this year. The legislature did reconvene on January 3rd, and February 18th was the last day for bills to be introduced. May 27th is the last day for each house to pass bills introduced in the House. And I'll go through each bill and provide a brief update. The first bill on the legislative summary is AB 105, the Upward Mobility Act of 2021, Boards and Commissions, Civil Service Examinations. This bill was vetoed on October 8th, and the governor's veto message is included in the legislative summary. There is another bill that was introduced this session. That's AB 1604, the Upward Mobility Act of 2022. And I'll go ahead and speak about that later on in this report, which seeks to address some of the concerns from the governor's veto message from the original bill, the AB 105. The second bill is AB 107, Licensure Veterans and Military Spouses, and this bill was chaptered on October 8th and will require most boards and bureaus within DCA to issue temporary licenses to military spouses who meet specified criteria as outlined in the bill. PTBC, though, is exempt from the provisions of the bill, or specifically exempt from BPC section 115.6, which states that this section shall not apply to a board who has a process in place by which an out-of-state license applicant is able to receive expedited temporary authorization to practice. The next bill on the legislative summary is AB 225, DCA Boards, Veterans, Military Spouses Licenses, and this is a two-year bill, and it has been referred to the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. This bill would expand the provisions of the military spouse temporary licensure program to apply to military veterans who have been other than dishonorably discharged and active duty members with orders for separation in 90 days. EB 305 Veteran Services Notice was ordered to inactive file on September 1st at the request of Senator Eggman. So again, I'm going through the bills that were on our agenda from the September meeting and just kind of providing an update. And then I'll go into the bills that were introduced this session, just for clarification.
Thank you.
And then AB 339, State and Local Government Open and Public Meetings. This bill was vetoed on October 7th. And would have required until December 31st certain cities, council, or county board of supervisor meetings to allow the public to attend and comment via telephone or internet. And again, this kind of brings up the passage of AB 361, which addresses the ability for open meetings and teleconferences, which I'll be speaking about next. AB 361, the Open Meetings State and Local Agencies Teleconferences. This bill was chaptered on September 16th. And we did have a support position for this bill. This bill allows the board and local agencies to use teleconferencing without complying with certain provisions in the Badgley-Keene Open Meeting Act, including the requirement that each teleconference location be accessible to the public and that members of the public be able to address the legislative body at each teleconference location until March 31st, 2022. So AB 1733 was introduced this session, and I'll go ahead and touch about that on that bill later on in the legislative report as well, as DCA reported earlier. The next bill is AB 657, State Civil Service System Personal Services Contracts, and this is a two-year bill after reconsideration is granted in June of 2021, and it's currently in the Senate Governmental Organizational Committee. This bill would prohibit state agencies from entering into a contract with a professional as defined for a period of more than 365 days in a 24-month period. However, the provisions of this bill do not apply to DCA or a board or bureau within DCA. The next bill is AB 1273, Interagency Advisory Committee on Apprenticeship, was chaptered on October 4th. This bill expands membership of the Interagency Advisory Committee on Apprenticeship to include the State Public Health Officer and the Director of Consumer Affairs, and expands the use of earn and learn training model by preventing these two government entities from prohibiting its use for personnel training or accreditation of programs and requiring them to use licensing or certification standards that authorize it. SB 250, healthcare coverage. This bill failed its deadline on July 14th. The following bill is SB 607, Professions and Vocations, was chaptered on September 28th, which was the Senate BMP's omnibus bill. And this bill made statutory updates, technical corrections, and other non-controversial changes to statutes for boards and bureaus within DCA. SB 731, criminal records relief, is currently in the Senate and it's on the Senate floor, and Assembly Member Ting is asking for reconsideration. AB 1604 is the bill I touched about a little earlier, and this bill was recently introduced and is a continuation of AB 105 that was vetoed. So this bill was referred to the Assembly Appropriations Committee, and this bill would establish that it is the policy of the state that the composition of state boards and commissions be broadly reflective of the general public, removing references to ethnic minorities or women from its policy. This bill also requires on or after January 1st, 2023, all state boards and commissions consisting of one or more volunteer members or commissioners to have at least one volunteer board member or commissioner from an underrepresented community, as defined. And this bill also further clarifies that new board or commission members should be replaced under these parameters as vacancies occur. The next bill, AB 1662, Licensing Boards Disqualification from Licensure, Criminal Conviction, has been referred to the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. This bill specifically would allow a prospective applicant that has been convicted of a crime to submit a request to a board for a pre-application determination on whether they would be disqualified for licensure. So the prospective applicant would not need to pay a fee or submit any official documents. Staff are recommending an opposed position on this bill due to the significant fiscal and workload impact the provisions of the bill would require to staff. Did members have any question on this bill, or can we go into anything?
So this was the first bill on the legislative report where staff's actually made a recommendation. So I'll just leave it to Madam President to decide, do you want to go through the legislative report, or would you like to stop and have a conversation about this particular bill?
I think we should take each bill one by one. So I'd like to talk about this bill.
Okay. One of the things in particular about this bill and the reason for staff's recommendation of an oppose, while this bill is still somewhat in its infancy, the idea that it's proposing essentially would mean that an applicant, prior to even entering into an education program, who has criminal history, would have an application process with the board where they could file essentially, here's what I've done wrong, here are my criminal records. Could I or could I not get a license? The language is a little ambiguous in the sense that it doesn't speak to timeframes, what kind of proof would have to be provided, how much scrutiny are we actually talking about in determining whether or not they could be licensed or not, and would the board be held to a specific commitment in that determination? And that determination could come 7 years prior to application with certain types of education. A lot happens in 7 years. Criminal history can fall off the record in 7 years, or we could make a commitment based on criminal history in 2022, and I could have that applicant reoffend, before they're able to complete their programs, and really the variables and the equations change, but we may be committed to a particular outcome. So I think it's something that where I understand the frustration for physical therapy in particular. You know, we've gone over this kind of topic with 2138 and we've kind of mulled through our statistics, and we know that those with criminal history really aren't being frozen out of the profession, right? So out of 7 in a 3-year fiscal period, 6 were denied, but then allowed into the profession with an initial probationary license. So that, you know, the numbers are somewhat infinitesimal when it comes to the applicants received with criminal history actually being denied for that criminal history. And I understand that we're a little bit different in that sense, and that this bill is addressed towards some other boards and bureaus in the way that they license both professional and vocational licenses. But the opposed nonetheless for us is essentially it would be a misuse of resources. And without having further clarification in just how diligent we are in that pre-application, whether approved or denied, we don't think it's worthy. We don't think it's a path to address, even addressing, you know, that kind of unknown chill factor. So one of the things that was brought up in 2138 is you don't know how many people you haven't received applications from because they have criminal history. And we've even considered that here in our recommendation for an oppose on this particular bill. This bill was discussed at the DCA Legislative Roundtable a few weeks ago, and it sounded to us at the time that there's a fairly large consensus of concern from all of the regulatory boards, most importantly and most especially the healthcare boards, because of the nature of how criminal offense can be substantially related to their ability to practice with our citizens and our consumers safely.
So this bill would ask boards to tell someone ahead of time, yes, you'll get a license, or no, you will not get a license based on your history, your situation.
Yeah, I think an even simpler way to say it is, I have criminal history, does it disqualify me from licensure? And I think just with knowledge of the application process and even this board's particular history, that question is not that easily answered, right? There are other variables in place that have to be considered. The other thing that I don't think is being taken into account in this particular bill is if they said, you know, I have this particular offense, this criminal offense on my record, and this bill was forced to tell them, no, that would disqualify you. You know, we all know that time is a mitigating factor. And so to just say, no, don't bother, I think creates its own chill effect, if you will. And it would screen people out who might otherwise still apply and be likely of licensure if they provided the right rehabilitation or remediation. So again, I appreciate the idea behind this bill. I just don't think that it is a problem. It's almost a solution to a problem we don't have.
Any board member questions, comments, discussion?
I guess I had a question. So do we have the option to either just abstain from taking a position for it as well, or?
Certainly. And that is one of the things where, and typically just from culture, at this part of the legislative session, you wouldn't actually see staff provide a recommendation on a bill. We would like the language to get worked out a little bit farther. I think we're a little gun shy from things like 2138 and our experiences and even feedback from the legislature that they need this kind of feedback earlier in the process. And so here we are making this recommendation, but it is certainly up to the board to discuss, deliberate, if you will, and determine whether or not it's now is the time, or maybe we'll do it later in the session, or maybe not at all. It is just a recommendation from staff, and you certainly have the choice to choose whichever position this board wants to hold.
I guess I need to know more too, because is there liability? Because if we say, oh no, you're not gonna, can that person now come back and sue because we didn't go through the process and denied this individual an opportunity to go through the process, which, you know, a lot of times that's what the process is there for, so that they can be vetted. is there a potential for us to be liable if we turn someone away? That's another question that I had as well.
In your question of liability, particularly you as members, individuals, or as the board, as a government entity?
As a government entity.
I'll let Mr. Connotes, board counsel, answer that question.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I hadn't thought about it from that angle, but certainly if the bill passed and an individual applied for this predetermination and the board indicated that the potential applicant would not be eligible, the bill doesn't provide an appeal process for that, but one might be able to, in that instance, seek judicial review through a traditional writ of mandate. And I would think that that would be heard by a court, since it's an official action on behalf of a government entity. The other side of the coin is if the board found that the individual, despite the criminal conviction, would be eligible, I think the board would certainly be held to that decision if and when the individual applies. Now, if there's another criminal conviction in the meantime, I think there's a pretty good argument to be made that that criminal conviction would have to be looked at separately. But have I answered your questions, Mr. Urban?
I think so, and I think that I guess my last question is, why not just go through the process? Why do we need this predetermination?
Yeah. And that I alluded to it. I'll just be a little bit clearer in it. Where I don't think that necessarily applies to our application population. Again, as an example, because of our numbers, this isn't really a problem that we have. I do know that in certain vocational licensing programs within DCA, there are a significant number of denials, right? So if somebody has criminal history and there's a substantial relation to whatever the issuance of that license is, that person would be denied. And there has been feedback, if you will, through constituents to their congressmen and senators and assemblymen, that creates an issue for those folks financially, because they've gone through educational programs, they've attained the education required for that license. And I think what they're saying is it would have been nice to have known ahead of time that they shouldn't have pursued that particular education at that expense, knowing that their criminal history would have excluded them in the first place. Both in the conversation between you and Mr. Connotes, one of the things that kind of struck me was there are things that can happen in the interim, and your comment of going through the application process itself is that initial screening, is that initial vetting. But again, I think what they're looking for here is some kind of remedy for the applicant to determine whether or not it's even worth going to school before they pursue that particular vocation or profession.
Thank you.
Other board questions, comments, discussion?
Yeah, Madam President, this is Jesus. Jason, to your point, I understand, right? It's sort of like looking in the crystal ball. It would, logistically, this would be a very difficult process to actually put in place. We're really talking about, in the sort of the traditional student, these are undergraduates that are thinking about a career in physical therapy. And I mean, candidly, I will tell you that our program does not disqualify applicants if they disclose certain behaviors in the past, let's say, but we do sort of remind them that honesty is the best policy in terms of disclosing when it comes time to apply for licensure. But I'm just, I'm trying to think of folks that this may not even be on their radar when they're applying, although it probably should.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
I like your use of the word logistics, because when we're thinking about what this application process would look like in its practical application, it's essentially the application process minus the examination and vetting of education. right? So does that mean that these particular folks with their criminal history, am I going to need them to fingerprint? Am I going to rely on their disclosure of everything? You know, are they giving me 3 out of 4 charges? Are they giving me documents for 2 out of 4 charges? I won't know. I won't have a rap sheet. I won't have anything to compare it to. So part of that is honesty, right? It's relying on the integrity of the applicant to fully disclose all the criminal history they might have. And I don't mean to paint that in a negative light, right? But people do forget their convictions sometimes. That's my experience, right? In an application process, we do a fingerprint-based criminal background check that reveals any kind of criminal history they might have had with the Department of Justice in the state of California, and a one-time check for anything that they might have done elsewhere through the FBI. And so if they have a particular conviction in mind that is a concern and is part of their deciding factor of whether or not they're going to attain a master's or a doctorate level education to pursue licensure, if they're not bringing me everything to make that determination, I have doubts in the validity of that decision. They may not have given me everything that we need to make the determination, but we would discover it as part of the initial application through their fingerprints. And what seems like something that should have been a reassurance to them could now be a false sense of security.
I pause just to allow any other board members to, and I do want to move up opportunity to speak. Any other discussion, any motions anyone wants to make? And so I'll just refer to council as far as if a motion was to be made, would we stop here in the process and ask for public comment and vote on it now?
That's correct, Madam President. So if we're going to take any action, we would request public comment on the motion itself that takes the action.
Okay. And so I would like to move that the board president work with board staff in crafting a letter of opposition to this bill.
I can second that.
The motion by myself and a second by Dr. Dominguez. Any other board discussion? And moderator, can we please facilitate public comment and public, those of you in attendance, the board really does value your comments, so please feel free to participate in public comment.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. Or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, we do have Stacy Defoe raising her hand. So just a reminder, if you could please keep your comment to 3 minutes. And Stacy, you should be able to unmute yourself. And you're unmuted. So Stacy, you are unmuted, but we're not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. I was muted on my own as well for some reason.
Okay.
I just had a question regarding the process right now for open comment. Is this open comment regarding the legislative report as a whole or regarding this particular piece of legislation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is specifically regarding AB 1662.
Okay, great. Then I don't have a comment, but may have a comment later on the report as a whole.
Thank you.
All right, in that case, I do see no comments at this time. Shall we close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Alicia Benaman.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
7-0, motion carried.
Thank you. So I will work with board staff on drafting a letter. And you can continue.
Okay, moving on to AB 1733, State Bodies Open Meetings. This bill was referred to the Assembly Governmental Organizational Committee and the Assembly Business and Professions Committee. This is an urgency bill, and it would specify that a meeting held under the Badgley-Keene Open Meetings Act includes a meeting held entirely by teleconference as defined, so long as the state body adheres to certain specified requirements, such as ensuring the public has the means to hear, observe, and address the state body during the meeting, providing the public with at least one physical location where they can participate, posting the meeting agendas online and at the physical meeting location with information indicating how the meeting can be accessed, and ensuring that if a means of remote participation fails, the meeting must adjourn. Staff are recommending a support position on this bill as it will allow us to continue to utilize WebEx and other online platforms in addition to having a public meeting.
So again, this is another bill where we're actually recommending or making a staff recommendation, and kind of discussed earlier in the DCA update, Mary Kate brought this bill to the forefront with the idea of edits to Badgley-Keene and open meetings and kind of coming out of the global pandemic and the exemptions that we've all been familiar with over the last 2 years, and facing the antiquated language of things like the old-fashioned teleconference and in-person meetings. So 1733 is something that we are in support of at the staff level. We believe that the addition of telephonic video conferencing means is not just a good replacement for the teleconferencing system, but you can tell by our recommendation and our sunset language that we think that it's a valuable and an added tool and an additional point of access to any type of meeting that we might be holding. And so I think we've discussed that amongst members and staff for the last 5 or 6 months in reference to our own sunset bill. So 1733, again, is something that we think is runs in alignment with our request in our Sunrise bill. And so we would certainly like to support this concept moving forward. Again, it's early in the session, but this bill could move rather quickly because of the urgency behind it and the need, not just for the Department of Consumer Affairs, but any agency that's meeting under the APA and Badgley-Keene. They're all feeling the crunch of, how do you deal with your stakeholders in a post-pandemic world with travel restrictions and, lack of access. So again, this is definitely something that we're looking forward to as a means to a problem that we're all kind of dreading.
Thank you. Board member questions, comments, discussion, motion?
I guess I have one comment. I think I definitely believe in open meetings, but I do, working in the computer field, I understand that as we move into doing more things digitally, we got to keep some of that tradition and history of our country and being able to assemble. So I'm glad that's in there. But also in the future, we want to make sure that it's safe and can't be deep faked and can't be hacked, because as we, I don't know if there's any security type stuff in this bill, but if this is going to become the norm, we already have to worry about deep fakes and stuff on Facebook, but someone mimicking someone else in a meeting, hacking into it, there definitely, needs to be thought about, especially where we're at right now. But that's the only comment I have.
I certainly agree with you with previous discussions we've had about this idea, where I don't envision for the Physical Therapy Board of California that this bill replaces the way we meet with our stakeholders, right? That we stay in our ivory towers and we meet remotely and we don't actually get out with the public and rub elbows. Quite the contrary, I think that what I'm proposing and what we propose for the sunset materials is in addition to, not in lieu of. So this would be an additional point of access, an additional way for the public and our stakeholders, our licensees, educational programs to participate regardless of where they might be in the state. So if we're in Southern California, we may be meeting with people in person in Southern California, but this would allow other folks throughout the state to also participate. Your concern about security is definitely something that I echo as well. And while I don't think any security language actually exists within this particular piece of legislation, I will tell you that it exists elsewhere. And so anything that's going to be applied as a layer of technology over top of this will be covered by, the Office of Information Services. And there are, consistent and constant audits that are occurring even at the level of the Department of Defense as it relates to the IT issues or IT uses that the Department of Consumer Affairs has. And we have some pretty strict protocols in place when it comes to security. So while it's absent in the legislation, I think there's a reason for that. It already exists elsewhere when it refers to technology that DCA utilizes.
Track it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment and increasing my awareness about that. Other board member comments, questions, motion? I'll move that the board president works with board staff to draft a letter of support for AB 1733.
I can second that. Or third.
Okay, a motion by myself. We'll take the second from Dr. Armstrong and a third from. Okay, and any further board comment? And hearing none, moderator, could you please facilitate public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on the motion, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I'm not seeing any requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A roll call vote, please.
Alicia Benaman.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
7-0, motion carried.
Thank you. And next bill.
AB 2104, Professions and Vocations, was referred to the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. Currently, this is a spot bill. In its current form, this bill would authorize DCA and each board within DCA to charge a fee not to exceed $2 for the certification of a copy of any record, document, or paper in its custody.
In addition, this bill would require the delinquency penalty or late fee for any licensee within the DCA to be 50% of the renewal fee for that license, however, not to exceed $150. So again, this is a spot bill. It's early. The next bill on the legislative summary is AB 2600, state agencies, letters and notices. Requirements was recently referred to the Assembly Accountability Administrative Review Committee. This bill would require that every state agency, when sending any communication to any recipient, shall state in bolded font at the beginning of the communication whether it requires action on the part of the recipient or serves as a notice requiring no action. Staff are recommending an opposed position on this bill.
So this one's a little different. While we kind of already do this in the communications that we send out. If there's something that actually requires attention, it's not uncommon in applications or enforcement actions for us to use the words action needed. What we're opposed to is branding all of our correspondence with either one or the other. And one of the reasons that I'm opposed to that, and staff and certainly a number of boards at DCA agree, is I don't want to water down the board's correspondence and ability to communicate with its licensing population, where if they become accustomed to, they don't have to open or read anything that doesn't say action needed. They can just somehow discard it into the circular file, if you will, unless it's stated otherwise. I think it has an undue effect in the sense that anything that says no action needed now becomes an extraneous piece of paper that I have no ability to rely on its consumption. And so it's one, I think it's a little unnecessary. Two, again, I think it's one of those broad brush approaches to problems that occur elsewhere that we're being affected by. I don't have a lot of feedback from my own licensees or my applicants about discerning whether or not materials they receive through printed mail should be opened or shouldn't be opened. So again, some of it's just the necessity and kind of being opposed to a broad brush approach.
I'm actually thinking of a case or a possible instance where there might be a reply needed if indicated or if it's appropriate. And so that's like a maybe.
Right.
Right.
And there were discussions. Again, we had a legislative roundtable with representatives from all the boards and bureaus from the Department of Consumer Affairs. And one of the things that did come up is you could see a workaround to this particular piece of legislation where boards would just choose to brand all of their correspondence with an indication that it needed to be opened, that it needed to be acted upon, even when it didn't, just to avoid any of those kind of issues, trying to discern between one or the other.
Any board questions or comments or recommendation?
Yeah, Madam President, real quick, thank you. Jason, I'm reading this. I just want to make sure I understand it. So this labeling is not, the proposal is not to put it on the outside of the envelope, but you have to physically open the envelope to figure out if action is needed or not. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a little bit of debate about that too. The existing language is the beginning of the communication. So on top, just below the letterhead, that kind of thing, or would we go so far as to put it on the outside of the envelope? Some of the things that we have to do is speculate on the intent of the legislation. So especially this early in this session where it might not have, kind of fettered itself out just yet. I think we have to be open-minded to the fact that it might end up being both, right? And again, whether it's on the outside of the envelope or the top of the letterhead, I'm still of the mind that it's somewhat unnecessary and kind of demeans any communications that the board is having if it says no actions needed, but its informational piece. Is it an update in legislation? Is it an update in regulation? Is it the board's newsletter? Is it anything like that where I really want my licensing population to digest it and take it in, but I'm going to brand something across the top that says no action needed? Just doesn't sit well with me.
Other board member comment? I have a question. If we, as a board, decided not to take any action right now and waited until June, could this move quickly, or would June still be a time to possibly take action?
Yeah, I have no concerns with this bill being a rapidly moving bill. So if the board's not comfortable taking any kind of position at this time, that's perfectly okay. It's something that we would probably be bringing back to the June meeting with more information even, and maybe even a stronger influence towards oppose, or maybe it mitigates itself by then.
Okay, hearing that, any board member comment? Ms. Ellaby, Ms. McMillian?
This is Kat. I like the idea of waiting until the June meeting and having a little bit more information before we take a position.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Kat. It's early. I think we can wait on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the next bill on the legislative summary is AB 2636, Refugees, Asylees, and Special Immigrant Visa Holders. This is currently pending referral to committee. This is also a spot bill at this time. In its current form, this bill would make non-substantive changes to provisions requiring the boards within DCA to expedite and authorize boards to assist the initial licensure process for an applicant who supplies satisfactory evidence to the board that they are a refugee, have been granted asylum, or have a special immigrant visa as specified.
We don't have to talk about this in detail right now, but how do you expedite the foreign educated process? I mean, any more than what we're doing now.
Similar to those expedites that we do for military veterans or their spouses. There's no expedite in the fulfilling of requirements or deficiencies within the application process, but they would certainly go to the front of the line, right? So they'd have a little bit more attention applied to them. In this case, I could see with refugees or asylees that because of their given circumstances, in some ways being new to this culture and new to this nation, that my staff could assist them in the application process itself, and I would consider that as part of the expedited process. So similar to what we've referred to as kind of that concierge level service for the military, we would apply that same concept and that theory to this.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. Board members, as we go through the bills, just please unmute and jump in if you have comments or questions. Otherwise, I'll have Brooke continue.
SB 1031, Healing Arts Boards and Active License Fees, is set for hearing in the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development on April 18th. This bill would require the renewal fee for an inactive license to be half of the amount of the fee for renewal of an active license unless the board establishes a lower fee.
I'm not sure I understand this.
So currently, using PTBC's renewal as an example, the renewal fee for active is the same as it is for inactive. This bill would essentially say all boards that haven't established a lower fee for the difference between active to inactive would now be required to have half of the typical renewal fee for their inactive status. So if I have a licensee who's up for renewal and they're choosing an active status, in this example, instead of paying $300, they would pay $150. Moving forward to come out of inactive status, that's one of the things that we're not really sure in the legislation how that would apply, because we would want to make sure that if they went inactive for a period of 2 months, when they came back, they still have to pay the balance of whatever that particular renewal was. There are some boards in the Department of Consumer Affairs that within their own Practice Act do have fees that are less than, or inactive fees that are less than their active fees. Typically in those models, their legislation and their regulation accounts for it. And if they do go into an active status for a month or two, 6, even up to 23, if they come back out prior to the expiration of that renewal, they pay the full fee to come back into active status. So it's not one, staff hasn't recommended a position of any kind because, you know, it's the will of the legislature at that point, and this is a department-wide bill. And like I said, where some boards have chosen to have lower fees for their inactive licensees, the majority have not, and PTBC being one of those. Inactive is kind of funny in the sense that it's akin to delinquent. It's a renewable license. It could be inactive or delinquent today, and it could be active tomorrow. And so it's the potentiality that we're always looking towards when we're talking about the fee. Having said that, looking at our inactive status right now, and just kind of doing general math and calculating revenues received being 50% of what they would normally be, it's not that significant of an impact. It might start to be once the news spreads and people know that they only have to pay half of what they normally would to go into an active status. So,
Thank you. I'm comfortable just watching this one.
So this is Daniel. Do we currently issue inactive licenses?
So you renew,
or does somebody just transition from an active to an inactive when they don't pay their renewal fee?
So if they don't pay the renewal fee, they transition from active to delinquent. But at the point of renewal, they have the option to still pay the renewal, but be exempt from continuing competency by choosing inactive status. They're also prohibited from practicing at that point.
And so do we, then to my first question, do we issue an inactive license to anybody?
And when you say issue, you mean upon renewal or upon initial application?
So the first sentence of the summary says each board is required to issue an inactive license.
Correct.
To a holder of an active license who's not restricted.
It's just kind of the common terminology versus the technical. So, and that's where I was trying to get at. Yes, we issue an inactive license based on a renewal application.
I'm not following that.
So it's your choice.
And this is, I guess, part of the challenge that I've always had with the different labels that get put onto our licenses.
At the point of renewal, the licensee has the option of one, either renewing as active or renewing as inactive. Inactive is the same fee. The only difference between the two is prohibited from practice, but is also not responsible for obtaining any continuing competency credits. So in lieu of retirement per se, if a licensee was willing to take a year or 2 years off, instead of being bound to an active license where they would be required to be able to prove continuing competency for that period of time, they could choose to renew as inactive. They would be prohibited from practicing, but they would not be bound to their continuing competency requirements. And I think the intent.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm just thinking about, so say I renewed at the beginning of this month, but I chose not to, and I don't complete any continuing competency requirements until, like many of our licensees we've noticed do until February of 2024. But at that point, I choose to just not pursue my continuing competency requirements. But I do choose to renew. I can at that point choose to be inactive, and then continue to have a license but not practice and not take Con Ed anymore or continuing competency courses.
But to be clear, that inactive status is not retroactive. You would have required to obtain your 30 hours for that renewal period. when you chose an active status, it's for the next 2-year period, the one that you're entering into.
Right.
Now, let's say, just to go off of that particular scenario, you make that decision at the point of renewal. 6 months later, you change your mind. You would file an active to active application with this board to come back into practice. And at that point, you would attest under penalty of perjury that you've obtained at least 30 hours over the last 2 years toward your continuing competency requirement, and we would make you active.
So I think that if this bill were to pass, it would seem to me that then it actually is imposing a more active role on the licensee to choose to be in the inactive status because the fee would change.
The fee would change. It would actually become less. And I think that's
right.
The legislature in saying that. So for those folks that are choosing, for whatever reason, to step away from the profession for a period of time, that the assumption is that they're not as much of an administrative burden on the board, and so they don't have to pay the same equal fair share. And their proposed language here is 50% of that cost. Again, if 6 months later they choose to come back to the profession, that's one of the things that we'll have to work out in this legislative language as to how those monies are now adjusted or collected. Is there a proration, or is it just the other $150 or what have you? I think this definitely assists those licensees who choose to be in an inactive status for multiple renewal periods at a time, but don't want their license to be subject to being canceled after a 5-year period of time.
Thank you.
All right. The next bill is SB 1237, licenses, military service, and this bill was referred to the Senate B&P Committee and Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. This bill would require boards and bureaus within DCA to waive license renewal fees for active duty members stationed outside of California. The next bill on the legislative summary is SB 1365, licensing boards procedures, and this was set for hearing in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee on April 4th. This bill would require all boards to post a list of criteria used to evaluate applicants with criminal convictions on their website. DCA would also be required to develop a process for each board to use in verifying applicant information and performing background checks of applicants, as well as develop a procedure for an informal appeals process.
I'll just speak to that one real quick, just because it's so similar to the bill that we asked for the opposition on. There are some differences here. And I think we're also kind of hedging our bets in the sense that the bills are similar and come from opposing sides, that one's going to either conjoin with the other or what have you. This one is a little bit different, though, because this one does put some of the onus back on the licensee in obtaining the documentation. And if you think about 2138 and the effect that we had to remove the criminal conviction question from the application, and we could not require the licensee any longer to provide court documents, arrest records, what have you, that staff would have to obtain them directly. This bill speaks to that in the sense that it puts that onus back on the applicant as part of this pre-application process. So currently, board doesn't have a recommended position, but I just wanted to kind of delineate the differences between the two bills. And like I said, it's very early in the legislative session. So some of those kinks, some of those differences between the two bills, I think will work out over time.
Drum roll.
The final bill in the legislative summary is SB 1438, Physical Therapy Board of California Meetings, Remote Access. And this bill was set for hearing in the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development on April 18th.
This is the board's sunset bill and additionally would require the board to provide remote access to participants at all meetings. We are, of course, recommending a support position on the bill since it will be addressing the issues we've identified in our sunset report, as well as extend the PTBC.
The other thing I would add to this is, and Brooke kind of alluded to it, this is our sunrise bill. This is a bit of a placeholder momentarily. I do think that it is telling that the language that they chose to be our placeholder refers to the remote access issue. I think that speaks to how popular this particular topic is with the state and also with the legislature. So we definitely expect 1438 to be amended to include some of our other issues and address extensions in our statutes that are normally extended as a result of sunset. But again, this is definitely one that staff would appreciate a letter of support issued to the legislature.
Board member comment?
This is Daniel. I have a question about your use of the word participants. And if this is intended to be board members, or is this intended to be anyone who chooses to participate?
Anyone who chooses to participate.
Just the language in the summary, actually in the bill itself, really addresses the board and talks about the board. But then it's only this one phrase that includes the word participant. So
yeah, and I do expect that language to be amended very soon. Again, just part of the placeholder for our sunrise bill, and based on a recommendation from our sunset report, similar to the bill that we talked about that's DCA and department-wide, we're asking for the remote access be a requirement, but that remote access both being utilized for both members to participate, but also the public as well. So participants being a very generic term.
And remote access is a generic term.
And I think remote access being a generic term for the where we're using it, we're also different and much more specific in the department-wide bill. The other reason that the language reads the way it does in the summary and also in the bill is because it's affecting currently in its current state, which again, it's in its infancy, is only a reference to the mandate that the board has with its meetings, right? 3 times a year, once in Southern California, once in Northern California. And where we've said we'd like that particular statute to be amended to also require us to provide a virtual component of some kind, remote access of some kind for all participants. They've used that as our spot bill, as our placeholder for our sunrise language.
Other board comments, discussion, questions, motions? I would like to make a motion for the board president to work with PTBC staff on crafting a letter of support for SB 1438.
I second it, Tanya.
Motion by myself and a second by Ms. McMillian. Any other board discussion? And hearing none, can we have the moderator please facilitate public comment?
Thank you, Madam Board President. I'm opening up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on Agenda Item 13, please type comment using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists, or you may simply raise your hand. We are displaying instructions. And I do see that Stacy Defoe has a comment, and just a reminder, if you could please keep it to 3 minutes. Stacy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Yeah, it's still morning. I have a couple of comments. I wanted to bring the board's attention back to SB 250. This is a bill, a prior authorization bill. It is a 2-year bill, as is mentioned in the report. It was
Stacy,
kind of.
Stacy, before you go further, we are taking public comment specifically on SB 1438, but we do want, if you have comments on that, we want to hear it now, but we do definitely want to hear your comments on the other bills. Do you have anything on SB?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was on agenda item 13 in general, so yeah. I will hold my.
So that's coming right up. So hold on to that. Anything for SB 1438?
This is the moderator. I don't see any requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Alicia Benet-Men.
Aye.
Tanya McMillian.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
7-0, motion carried.
Thank you very much. And so now, Stacy, I apologize. It gets a little awkward here with public comment and knowing when to jump in, but we would like to open up public comment for agenda item number 13 in general.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator.
Yes. Stacy, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you since I know you had a comment for all of agenda item 13, so you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, this is the moderator and she is not unmuting herself, so I don't know if she stepped away. Oh, there we go. Stacy, you're unmuted now.
Hello, I'm here. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So wanted to bring the board's attention, thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. Wanted to bring the board's attention to SB 250. There wasn't much discussion of it from the board. It sounded like the report was saying that it didn't meet deadlines. I just wanted to make the board aware that this bill is still very much in play. It is over on the assembly side, waiting to be heard by the Health Committee. We anticipate that that bill would be heard probably in June sometime. So it is currently undergoing some amendments. Our understanding is to simplify it a little bit, but it is still very much in play. We see this as a consumer access issue. We are highly supportive of this bill in concept and are just looking to see the amendments, but would love for the board, PT board, to consider a support position on this bill. And then we can go back to that. There was one other bill that was in our bill folder that is I didn't see on yours, so I wasn't sure if the board is aware of it, but it is AB 646. And it would require professional licensing boards under the jurisdiction of Department of Consumer Affairs to update or remove information about an individual's revoked license within 90 days of receiving an expungement order, and does a couple other things. So just wanted to make the board aware of it if you're not already, something you might want to add to your list and take a look at.
Thank you for both of those things. And Council, we are able to hear public comment, but not necessarily respond.
Correct. respond briefly about perhaps placing it generally that though there's no requirement to respond to public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll certainly add 646 to the legislative report and bring information to the board at the June meeting.
Okay.
What was that bill number? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was, I should have spoke louder. I apologize. I was asking council about hearing public comment and being able to respond to that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a moderator. I see no further requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do see that is 11:52, seeing that we've got a hard stop at noon. I don't think we should dive into the rulemaking report. I think we'll hold that for right at 1 o'clock when we reconvene, if that sounds good to everyone else. Mr. Kaiser, does that sound like a plan?
I think that's the best plan of action.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you everyone for this morning, and I look forward to seeing you all right at 1 o'clock.